Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we are diving into one of the most unexpected and inspiring shifts in the entire war. The moment when hope returned to Pokrovsk and Ukraine's soldiers turned what looked like a hopeless defense into a sudden and powerful victory. This story is not just about strategy or firepower. It is about human spirit, determination, and the will to stand firm, even when the world believes you are moments away from collapse. In the beginning, Pokrovsk was seen as a doomed stronghold. Reports from the battlefield were full of grim predictions, suggesting that Russian units were making overwhelming progress. Artillery fire was constant, drones circled the skies, and Ukrainian troops faced some of the most intense pressure seen in recent months. Many analysts claimed that the fall of Pokrovsk was inevitable, but what no one expected was the shift that began deep within the defenders themselves, a shift that came from unity, sacrifice, and unexpected tactical brilliance. The soldiers in Pokrovsk refused to surrender their ground. Even when Russian forces increased their numbers and firepower, the defenders adapted. They started analyzing the patterns of Russian assaults, learning where the pressure was strongest and when the attack slowed. They understood that staying static meant defeat, so they reshaped their positions again and again, constantly moving, constantly adjusting, refusing to give Russia the stable target it needed for decisive breakthrough. In those difficult hours, communication between units became the lifeline of the defense. Ukrainian commanders were able to coordinate movements across different sectors, pulling back in some areas while pushing forward in others. Every action was calculated, not emotional. While the outside world saw chaos on the inside, Ukrainian troops were creating a rhythm, a structure, a pattern of resistance that slowly changed the entire momentum of the battlefield. Russian troops tried to break that rhythm by launching more infantry pushes supported by armor, but those attacks quickly met resistance. Ukrainian soldiers used hidden anti-tank teams, preset ambush points, and drone reconnaissance to counter every advance. Their tactics became sharper with each passing hour. They wasted no ammunition. Every strike had purpose. Every move had meaning. They made Russia pay for every single meter of ground attempted. Then came one of the most critical turning points of the battle, the arrival of a small reinforcement group that completely changed the mood inside the city. These troops were not large in number, but they brought new equipment, new energy, and most importantly, new morale. The soldiers already in Pokrovsk felt the shift instantly. Suddenly, they weren't just holding, they were preparing to push forward. The defenders felt support behind them, not just physically but emotionally. Hope returned in a moment, and that hope became fuel. Russian forces did not expect Ukraine to launch counter attacks from inside a city they were supposed to be collapsing. But that is exactly what happened. Ukrainian units began hitting Russian flanks, forcing them to pull back from certain positions. Drones became a major weapon again, correcting artillery and guiding precise strikes on Russian equipment. When Russian units tried to bring in reinforcements, they found themselves targeted before reaching the front. The battlefield momentum began to tilt. The defenders of Pokrovsk used every detail of the terrain to their advantage. They fought from basements, hallways, destroyed apartments, and even burned out vehicles positioned as temporary cover. What made their defense powerful was not just courage alone, it was discipline. They never broke formation. They never allowed panic to take over. Even when surrounded by noise, dust, fire, and collapsing buildings, they remained focused on the mission. As the hours turned into days, Russian soldiers began to grow frustrated. Their artillery could flatten structures, but it could not break the resolve of the defenders. Their infantry could attack repeatedly, but each push brought more casualties. Their armored units could move forward, but every advance risked walking into a Ukrainian trap. Slowly, Russia realized that Pokrovsk was becoming a graveyard for their momentum. In the middle of the chaos, a powerful moment occurred that soldiers still talk about. One Ukrainian unit, after being separated from others, managed to reconnect using a risky path between ruined buildings. When they rejoined, the emotion was overwhelming. These troops hugged, encouraged each other, and returned to fighting with even greater strength. That unity spread through the defenders like fire. It told everyone that the city was still alive. By this time, analysts outside Ukraine were stunned. Instead of collapse, the city was witnessing one of the strongest defenses seen in months. Ukrainian counterattacks began pushing Russian forces farther back than anyone anticipated. Maps that once showed shrinking Ukrainian positions suddenly began showing expansions. Russian troops who expected an easy victory found themselves losing ground in areas they had already claimed. The turning point became undeniable when Ukrainian soldiers launched a coordinated nighttime operation targeting Russian supply lines. The operation was extremely risky, but it worked. By cutting off ammunition routes and fuel deliveries, they forced Russian units into a defensive posture. For the first time in the battle, Russia was reacting rather than controlling. The attackers became the ones under pressure. With supply shortages, Russian morale began to weaken. Units that had once moved confidently were suddenly hesitant. Drones spotted groups of Russian soldiers taking defensive positions instead of pressing forward. Their artillery slowed. Their communication became chaotic. Ukraine, on the other hand, finally had the breathing room needed to reorganize and bring fresh energy into the front lines. The Ukrainian counter-offensive inside Pokrovsk grew stronger, not only because of reinforcements, but because of a deep psychological shift. The defenders now believed victory was possible. Every soldier could feel the momentum change. They were no longer fighting to survive, they were fighting to win. That mental transformation made them more dangerous than any weapon. Ukraine's artillery units outside the city also stepped up, targeting Russian command posts, ammunition depots, and troop concentrations. Every strike had purpose, every explosion carried weight. Russian units were hit repeatedly in areas they considered safe. Their ability to plan operations was disrupted. Their command structure became unstable. This was no longer just a battle, it was a collapse. The most astonishing part of the entire fight came when Ukrainian forces recaptured several key blocks in the outskirts of the city. These areas had been lost earlier, but now they were once again under Ukrainian control. The symbolic importance of this victory was massive. It showed the world that Ukraine was not retreating. It was not losing hope. It was rising. International observers noted that Pokrovsk had become a symbol of resilience. Videos of Ukrainian soldiers planting flags in liberated areas spread across social media, boosting morale across the country. Families watching from afar cried with relief. Troops on other fronts gained motivation from what happened in Pokrovsk. Hope spread far beyond the city itself. Russian troops continued trying to regroup, but their attacks were less coordinated. Their morale was visibly damaged. Ukraine kept applying pressure, forcing them into a cycle of mistakes. Each failed attack weakened their ability to sustain the battle. Each retreat opened new opportunities for Ukrainian advances. As the battle reached its final phase, Ukrainian soldiers cleared several strategic intersections and defensive lines. They removed mines secured buildings, and created fresh strongholds. The city that once seemed ready to fall was now building itself into an even stronger fortress. Russia's opportunity to capture Pokrovsk had slipped away, replaced by uncertainty and loss. Ukraine's victory in Pokrovsk wasn't just a tactical achievement. It became a story of heart, courage, unity, and unbreakable spirit. It showed the world what happens when soldiers refuse to give up, even when surrounded by overwhelming pressure. It proved that hope is a weapon as powerful as drones, artillery, or armor, and it taught the world that no battlefield is ever decided until the final moment. The defenders of Pokrovsk transformed fear into strength, exhaustion into resilience, and desperation into determination. They turned defense into victory through intelligence, bravery, and unshakable belief. With limited resources but unlimited courage, they rewrote the entire narrative of the battle. Hope returned to Pokrovsk, not because the situation improved, but because the soldiers refused to let it die. Their actions created the victory, their unity inspired the nation, their spirit changed the course of the fight. This victory will be remembered not just in reports or maps, but in the hearts of people who witnessed one of the most powerful comebacks of the war. And as Ukraine continues its struggle, the world will remember the moment when Pokrovsk stood tall and proved once again that courage can overcome overwhelming odds. The story of this battle is far from over, but what has already happened will stand as a reminder that victory belongs to those who refuse to break.